Okay. So thank you all for joining us. We'll begin with our opening prayers, the short refuge prayer, and the four vast immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodam soki chodam la Shangju badu dagni kapsuchi Dagi jinsoki pe sonamgi Drola penshir sange jupasho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pesam centam she dewadang dewe grudang dempa jorchi. Dugnal dang dunal gi gudang drawar jorchi. Dugnal me pe dewadang mi drawar jorchi. Nei ring jack dang ni dang drawe tang namla ne pa jorchi. Well, thank you. So, does anybody have any questions or any comments? Anything that you'd like to chat about before we begin this film? Okay. So this film is a series of snapshots that we took over 20 years ago now, 2004, during our pilgrimage to the four holy sites in India and Nepal, four holy sites of Buddhism. So I'll give a little narration. There's a little map in the very beginning, so I'll give a little bit of an explanation for that and so on. And so you'll see the scenery, you'll see, pictures of things that you may not have imagined before. And we wind up in Lumbini in Nepal, which was the birthplace of Shakyamuni Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. And there was built the Great Lotus Stupa. There was part of this construction project to make Lumbini the meditation capital of the world for the next 1,000 years. That's the intention for this building. You'll see many other temples being are under construction, but the Great Lotus Stupa was the first of those to be completed. So you'll see the inside of that and so on. So that was for the commemoration of that, or for the consecration of that stupa, was the impetus to have this pilgrimage. So sometimes I have a little trouble with the DVD that this is on. If it arises that there's a stuttering or something, please be patient. I'll correct it as quickly as I can. So I'm going to screen share. Okay, and then I have a couple things I have to set up here. Okay. And I just need to get my screen set up here a little bit. Okay, so I presume you can hear me and you can see this.
Yep.
You can hear the Om Mani Padme Hum.
Yep.
Okay, very good. So we flew into Dehradun in India. Excuse me, we flew into Delhi in India, and then from there we took a bus to Dehradun, which is the uh, place of exile of the Drikung Kagyu, which is north of Delhi. And then we came back um, to Delhi, and we took a train across the northern part of India to Bodh and then we went to Varanasi, and then to Sarnath, and then to Kushinagar, the place where the Buddha passed away, and to Lumbini, where he was born in Nepal, what is now Nepal. And in there we'll see the Great Lotus Stupa inside and out. And then there's a dedication, the consecration of the stupa. We'll see parts of that ceremony. And then there were teachings that are part of this 12-year cycle of teachings, the Wood Monkey Year teaching. So you'll see and hear some of those teachings. And then our last days as we made our way back to America from India. So we'll begin with this. Tripandin Ningpo is my teacher from the Tibetan Meditation Center in Frederick, Maryland. And he had four attending lamas, or monks, I should say, young monks, who were our attendants, who were helping us. We were a group of 13 people altogether. So these are the people from TMC here in Maryland who made the trip. I'll pause this just for a moment. So here is Delhi. We flew into Delhi. And from Delhi, we made our way up to up north here. It's not on this map, but Dehradun is up here. And Dehradun is a very famous place because this was the place where Gandhi was imprisoned by the British during World War II. Um, so it's a very beautiful place, very beautiful mountains, all surrounding a very large city that is up there. So then we came back down by bus and to Delhi, and then we took an overnight train all the way over to this region over here, which is where Gaya is, and we went to Bodh Gaya, which is where the holy enlightened stupa is, and you'll see that where we spent there. And from there, then we had another bus. We went to Varanasi, which was the place just outside of Varanasi where the Buddha began to teach the Four Noble Truths. And then from there, we made our way up to this region up here, where Kushinagar, where he passed away. And then from Kushinagar, then we took another bus and went through Nepal over here to this south eastern part here to Lumbini, which was the birthplace of the Buddha. And then from then we came back down through Gorakhpur and we continued back on another train back to Delhi and spent our last night in Delhi, and then came back home via an airplane. This is Tibetan colony. This is outside in the streets.
Music is very, very powerful medium.
Nighttime. Next morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, we're in the bus now, and we're headed north to Tibetan. You can see that the roadway is being shared by bicycles, animals, carts, people walking. This is a rest stop. It was early in the morning, so it wasn't open yet, but people would be stopping for lunch. As we headed north, we went through several villages. There's a water buffalo pulling a cart full of thatched grass and so on to build some thatch homes. These here are stacks of cow dung, which are stacked every morning by the women of the community, and they're stacked and dried, and they're used for heating inside their homes and for cooking. Is the cow dung. So you see this is everywhere. And you see over here is a little oven for things to be burned off if they need to be burned off. So
How does that smell?
What's that?
How does that smell when it burns?
It's kind of an acrid, sweet smell because all they eat is grass. So it's not terrible, but it's pungent. So forgive some of the photography here. I'm not a professional photographer. I was using a Sony point and shoot digital camera for these. So it was my first time doing this. So a lot of these images are blurry and so on.
I believe one of the most
See the
important
fields
factor
here.
is
And now we're going through another village.
or human affection.
And something to note here is a swastika on this building. This building is a school. And in India, the swastika is a very noble sign, is an auspicious sign that represents the teaching of the Dharma, teaching of the Buddha, but not just the Buddha, but the teaching, the Hindu teachings and so on. So it represents the education of Dharma, of higher education, of spirituality, in the culture. So it was co-opted by by Germany, during the time of the World War II and so on. And but in India, it has a very holy significance to it. Here is another little shop. Here they make the bricks. Some of the homes are made out of bricks, and the clay is the red is the color of the robes that the monks wear and so on. So they would take out the mud, and they would compact it into bricks, and then they would dry it in these ovens. And this is one of the chimneys here. So you see many of these spotted around northern India. This is a little restaurant. People with their bicycles pull up here and get lunch, get breakfast, whatever. And they have some stores here. So this is a typical little storefront that you would see. Back on the road. It's water buffalo. stuck behind the vehicle, cows in it.
When culture is
Now we
peaceful,
reached Dehradun. We're at the base of the countryside where Dehradun, where Jangjobling is. Jangjobling is the place of exile for the Drikung Kagyu, the monastery and the headquarters for the Drikung Kagyu lineage, which is our lineage. So here was a store, like a general store. It had a little restaurant, cafe inside and so on. So we had just arrived in there, probably late afternoon, and we were just getting ready to get back and go up to the monastery itself. So these are all people who were on the trip with us.
and compassionate.
This is Drupal Tinley Ningpo and the four lamas who were with us, the four monks who were with us. We call them lamas. It's an honorary thing to call them lamas, but they really weren't teachers, although they were very knowledgeable. They were in their young 20s. So they had been through quite a bit of education, and some of them had even engaged in long retreats and so on.
Peaceful mind.
This is the monastery itself. This is the shrine hall. These are rooms where the monks living there reside. On both sides, there was plot. Inside, the main altar of the shrine. Here's Drikung Kagyu demonstration. Here are tankas on the walls that are depicting episodes in the Buddha's life and so on. This was his parinirvana. This was where he was laid out to pass away and so on. And these tankas are really kind of three-dimensional because they are like appliques. They're not just paintings. They're material that is then glued onto the face of the paintings. So it has a real three-dimensional character to it that is absolutely magnificent. Huge prayer wheel, about 10 feet high. This is the Songten Library, and this was a huge accomplishment to be able to build this here, and houses many great scriptures and so on. The throne holder, His Holiness Chitseng Rinpoche, is a scholar himself, and he sponsored the housing and printing in different languages, the books of the Donghao caves. There were these writings that were found that have been in these caves for hundreds and hundreds of years and tell the story of early Tibet or early Buddhism in Tibet and even before. So in this library, people come to be able to study those scrolls and so on. And this is the king who was the sponsor of Buddhism coming to Tibet at the time. So a very beautiful place. side view of the library. Other side. You can see here that this is a guest house here for travelers coming in, people, dignitaries. We were able to stay there ourselves. And this is all nestled in three sides of a mountain. I don't want to say it's a canyon, but it's surrounded on three sides by these mountains. So it's very beautiful and picturesque. And here in this flat part here is where the construction of the library, the guest house, and over on this side over here would be the monastery that we saw a few minutes ago. This is inside some of those rooms, the monks. So we had tea everywhere we went. Everything was an event for tea. So eating little biscuits and cookies and candies and so on. So here is Drupal Tinley Ningpo again. And this is his sister who just came out of a 3-year retreat. There's a nunnery on the other side of the land where we just saw, and there's this nunnery there, and she had been in retreat for 3 years, just came out, so she was being honored here by Drupal and everybody together. These are the women. These are the nuns who were in the retreat for 3 years. And this is the retreat master over here on this side here. And this nun is an American nun who was traveling with us. She came from Florida, and she was living up in Frederick at the time, and she was traveling with us. And then here we are, all are grouped together at this time with Drupal, but here is Kenshin Kunchok Rinpoche, Kunchok Gyaltsen Rinpoche, who is the founder of the Tibetan Meditation Center in Frederick, Maryland. And he was staying in Dehradun for quite some time, and we had the pleasure of having an audience with him, and he was very generous in being able to give us a good talk and give us an explanation of what we were about to see on the rest of our journey on the pilgrimage. This is the next morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning, that we're gathering for tea to get back in the bus to head on down back to Delhi to meet the train to go to Gaya. It's chilly out in the morning. This was February, our time, and it was springtime for them. So now we're down in Delhi, and this is the train that we're getting ready to board. This was one of the attendants in the train. And this is in the waiting area. People are waiting for the train to take them to work and so on. It's quite filthy. The streets are terrible. Here, inside the train, the seats fold up for beds. So we met lots of different Indian people, Hindi people, and I really enjoyed them. I spent my time, talking with them rather than sitting with our group. I wanted to meet the people, and they were all very friendly. And this young woman here, this young girl, she worked for MCI, which was a telephone company. And if we were in America and needed customer support, we'd be calling customer support to MCI, and we'd be talking to a woman like her that was in India to help us sort out whatever our problems were. This was her mother. her father, who was an engineer in the Indian Army. This is a view of the farmland. You can see it's very flat in this part of India. Northern India is very flat. Lots of big farms. And the owners of the farms are the kind of very wealthy people that might be living on the Riviera, might be living in London, might be living in Abu Dhabi, or any great places, Japan or wherever, but great landowners. Here is a village. If you can see this, these are thatched roof huts where people live. And you find these on the outside of a village made up of hardened homes and so on. But the peasants who worked the fields and everything would be living in these thatched homes. Here's this group right here, the little village of thatched homes. Now we're going through the village. Here are the hardened houses and so on. So the way people live is the families. This would be a wealthy person's house. The living quarters would be upstairs here on this second floor, and maybe a third floor if they had a third floor. The first floor would be for the animals. So they would house their animals right there where they were. And they'd be work animals, or they'd be milk animals, for like that. And of course, the cows there are sacred, so there's no killing any of the animals, anything like that. So this is a paved street here, which is very unusual. This would have been a fairly well-to-do village. Of the village. Now we're reaching Gaya. So we just came into the train station here, and you see the porters carrying our luggage on their heads to get to meet the buses where we're going to then travel to our next destination. So this was about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning that we were doing this. And there was quite a bit of an argument that was going on. I should say it was not quite an argument, but a negotiation to how much money we were going to pay for these porters to take these bags. So they were arguing for about an hour. So afterwards, they finally settled on an agreement and so on. And I asked, what was the agreement over? And they said it was like a quarter, that they were fighting over, that, these bags would all be a quarter each rather than 10 cents each or something like that. So they do it for principle. It's part of their culture. We're making our way through the forest. This is outside on the parking lot. We're going to the bus. Now we're on the bus and we're making our way to the suburb. So here in Gaya, we're driving through Gaya. And one thing about northern India, because the animals run free, the cows, dogs, and so on like that, and they defecate wherever they are, and the people there, revere the cows and they respect them. If you drop a $20 bill on the ground, you're most likely to leave it there because it's absolutely filthy. So this is one of the interesting things about northern India. This is a house that is under construction or renovation. And you can see the construction is all done, the scaffolding is done in bamboo. They do not have any kind of machinery to build houses. They don't have bucket trucks. They don't have, pickup trucks. They don't have anything like that. Everything is done by hand and carried by bicycles or by motorcycles. Everything's carried around and so on. They do have electricity, but you'll see how that is managed. Here's the face of the building renovated. Now we're showing some kids who are on their way to school. And the best schools there are parochial schools. This is someone's home. This is the front yard of someone's home. You see people over here in the background. There, this is a temple, people going to a temple. There's another temple. We're in the bus driving through Gaya to get to the outside of Gaya. This is Bud Gaya, the enlightened Gaya. And Siddhartha Gautama sat under the Bodhi tree and achieved enlightenment. So this is the great this is the great enlightenment stupa that this is called. This is well over 1,000, 2,000 years old, and inside is a beautiful statue of the Buddha that many people have seen in pictures. So we'll see more of this as we continue. Confused. You can see some of the embellishments that are done on the stone that has all been hand carved hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. This is inside the stupa at the ground level. And people are waiting to go in line here, and all this is embellished with beautiful gold and stone. This is magnificent statue of the Buddha. There are many, many, many photographs. It's a very famous photograph, a very famous image of the Buddha. You can't stay here very long. They're moving very quickly. So here's silver and gold, the 8 auspicious symbols. And here are local people who are on their way in to pay their respects to Buddha. So these are carvings of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, of the wisdom Buddhas, of the 5 families of the Buddha are here, the 5 Buddha families, Ascobia, Ratnasambhava, Ascobia, Varanchana, Amitabha, and Amagoga City. And they're all around the base. They continue around, all around the base of this great enlightenment stupa. All this was done by hand. Here's our group again outside in the courtyards. Now this is the enlightenment tree. Now this is not the actual tree, but it is a cutting of the actual tree, is what has been said. That the actual tree was lost, over time and so on. but they took this cutting, planted it, and this is where it grows, and this is considered now to be the enlightenment tree that is representative of the tree that the Buddha sat under to achieve enlightenment. And this is outside on one of the sides of the stupa, the enlightenment stupa that we have been seeing. So leaves fall from the lotus, from the tree, and when they fall to the ground, you can pick them up, but you cannot go and pick any of the leaves or any of the fruit off of the tree itself. And at night, it's magnificent because there's lights to light it all up. I don't think I have any pictures of that. Magnificent. Here's the cloister walk, where it said that the Buddha walked. After he achieved enlightenment, he got up, and in his third week, he walked up and down, pacing back and forth, contemplating what he was going to be doing next. We talked about this in the Lalita Vistara Sutra. These are little stupas that would house relics from significant lamas and so on. There's another tree that's being honored. There's the courtyard. I have a penchant for loving to ring bells. During the break. So now we're on our way up to the Great Enlightenment Cave, the Great Bodhi Cave. And this is the river wash that swells up during the summertime, during the monsoons. So this is very flat, and it's made up of all small stones, small rocks and so on. And of course, now you can pass it no problem. We're on a bridge overlooking that. But during the summertime, this is a raging river. Here are some fields, natural fields, meadows. We're on our way going up into these low hills, these low mountains, to get to the Enlightenment Cave. It's up here. And this is a shrine that houses the face of the entry to the cave. Now we're looking down. We're looking down onto the village of Bodh which is all below down here. So this is the view that the Buddha would have looking down during the time that he was in the cave for 6 years. And his 5 friends were in adjoining nearby caves. Shrine commemorating this, and there's resident monks who live here. This is a statue that is inside the actual cave, and this is called the Starving Buddha statue. So you can see that all his bones and sinews and so on are all being, are on display here because he didn't eat anything substantial for 6 years. And he almost passed away until he realized that this was not going to be the way of the ascetic that he was searching for, that was going to teach him, show him the way to enlightenment, to be able to recognize the causes of suffering. And he finally got up and left. So this is inside the cave here, and the cave is completely lined with soot from the fires that were burned in here, from the candles and incense that were burned in here, because this has been used, many times by many other monks coming up, many other retreatants. These are some statues that are covered up for this particular time. So we managed to fit our group in here at one time. It was very solemn. Very beautiful. We did a meditation in here. So here is a materialization of Kathy Shaw. There's a statue of Shakyamuni. These are statues of Mahasiddhas, great holy beings. This is a courtyard here, and this is a, a, a bunch of juniper that is brought together and packed together and burns. The atmosphere is just and this beautiful smell, this aroma of juniper being burned all the time. So this is the parapet of the outside of the entrance to that cave. This is Kunchak Sotram, who is my good friend. So now this is coming back down into the valley, into that river wash. And here is a depiction of where the Buddha received the first food from the young girl, the goat herder girl, that gave him the yogurt and rice to begin to fortify himself as he made his way out of the cave to come and resume his meditation after he restored his strength. This is another location. This is the original location of the tree, of the enlightenment tree that the Buddha sat under. And here is another, would have been another cutting that was planted here. The actual location, which was adjacent to this river, to this riverbed. So this pavilion here, this pavilion safeguards the actual location where the tree was. You'll see inside a big hole in the floor of this, and this was the location of the root ball of the original tree. So this has been built to preserve that. So this is the location here. See inside, and people throw down kata offerings and so on to commemorate their time there for blessings. This is another commemoration of the offerings that were made to the Buddha. And these are the shrines that line the riverbed, commemorating families, villagers who came and subsequently gave food to the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, in order that he can gain his strength, that he can continue his meditations. So we talked about this in the Lalita Vistara, the Play in Full Sutra. So now we get on a bus to continue to Gaya to Varanasi. So now we're driving through Varanasi. What happened to the sound here? Just a moment.
So this trip was like 20 years ago, is that right, Amadorji?
Yeah, this is 20 years ago.
Do you think that over those last 20 years there has been much change in do you know, like as far as the
Probably not.
in-depth modernization?
Probably not. No, I don't think so. I don't know what happened to the audio here. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened to the audio here. So anyway, you see these trucks, these lorries here, and they're beautifully painted, and people are riding on top of the buses and everything. And here is a big village that we're driving through to make our way to Varanasi. We're headed in a westerly direction to go to Varanasi, and basically it's the same pathway, the same general pathway that the Buddha would have traveled on foot to get to Varanasi. And on the other side of Varanasi would have been Sarnath, where he began teaching. Let me see why the sound is not there. Sound should be there. Okay. So we're continuing through here, and you can see the congestion. This is midday. You can see by the shadows, and now we're coming into the late afternoon, mid-afternoon, late afternoon of Varanasi, and there's bazaars, where people come to market to buy, their fresh vegetables and so on like that, and fruits. And this is a typical thing. We're just moving through in our bus on our way here. And here is a part of the Ganges River system. And here is a home where people live up here. And you see here a thatched roof house. And the buses and the trucks are constantly honking their horns. This is a residence. And you see the animals here. And if you can look over here in this corner, if you can see my cursor, you see there's a little green figure there. In the next slide, you'll see that it is a woman right here, who is kind of looking out after the animals. And this is all on the first floor. This here is a Home Depot. This here is where you come to buy all that bamboo and so on like that to be able to build your scaffolding and to get the other supplies that you need to be able to do any construction work. And here are the carts that are used to deliver the goods. Here are bamboo ladders and so on. Here's other construction material here. So it is third world. I mean, no question. I mean, I thought I was prepared by having been down in Mexico many times, but nothing prepared me personally for what I experienced and saw, here in India. So there's more of the Home Depot. So now we're making our way through some streets, and here is an interesting thing, because here you see televisions and microwaves that are stacked on a three-wheeled bicycle that is driving these on a cart to their delivery location, wherever that's going to be. This is a prime mode of transportation, delivery service. So now the sun is beginning to set. You can see it's very beautiful. This is Varanasi, and Varanasi is the holiest city in India for Hindus. And it was here that the Buddha was making his way, saying, well, what should I do after I achieve enlightenment? Where should I go? Well, I should go to the holiest place in India. There will be a place for me, to be able to know what to do, what my next step is, and so on. But as he approached this, he realized there was nothing there for him, and he just continued walking straight through Varanasi and came out on the other side and came to Sarnath, which we're going to see in a moment. But nevertheless, here, Varanasi is still, for the Hindu people, is a very, very, very sacred place. And people come here to die. So here's a store, and And this is the electric system here, and the infrastructure for the telephones and the computers are here. And if you know anything about computers, the speed of the computer is measured in what they call the baud rate. So this baud rate was about 4. Usually it would be in the hundreds or something like that, hundreds of thousands. But with this nasty mess of wire, we tried to go to these little internet cafes where you can go and log on and send an email message and so on. And I just gave up after, about a half an hour trying to deal with this slow computer speed, and just left it and just stopped. So here's our bus. You can see the bus wall here on the side, the exterior wall. We're moving down this street, and here are these water buffalo and motorcycles, mopeds, and so on. This is typical. This time in the evening at Varanasi was beautiful. The atmosphere was beautiful. The aroma, because incense is being burned. Remember, this is the holiest place. So incense is being burned. There are people that are being cremated down at the river and so on. And there's music in the air. There's bells that are ringing and people chanting and everything. It was just absolutely fantastic in that regard. This is outside looking through the window in the hotel that we were in. My room was looking at this. We were able to stay in Best Western hotels. Where does the Best Western get its name? It gets its name from the hotels that are in the Eastern Hemisphere that are the Best Western style hotels. They have Western food, they have Western bathroom facilities, Western beds, and so on like that. So they're called the Best Western hotels. So we were staying in very, very good places, and it was very inexpensive for us based on, what we're used to. So now we're coming to Sarnath. Sarnath is 7 miles outside of Varanasi, called Deer Park, where the Siddhartha began to teach the Dharma. I'm going to try and get this music to play. Why isn't this doing? I don't want to restart this because Lord knows what will happen if I do that. Everything is where it should be. So here are these plaques that they put up. This one's written in Hindi, and gives the significance, the historical significance of what is happening in this particular area. So this is in Sarnath. This is the meadow. This is the place where the Buddha began to teach the Four Noble Truths. This is a sal tree right here. That is ubiquitous around here, where the type of tree that his mother would have held on to as she gave birth and so on. And here is where, just typical of where the Buddha would have sat, and he would have called his 5 disciples to come and sit with him, and he began to teach. So these are commemorations of the first monastery and Nalanda University that was built here. All this and all what we saw before in Gaya and Bodh Gaya, what we saw with the great Enlightenment Stupa, all of that would have been completely overgrown and wasn't discovered until the British came into India in the 16th, 17th century, when India colonized India. All the forest had overtaken all of this. It was just completely lost to the trees and the vines and the weeds and so on. And the British began to recognize that there were hidden, historical buildings here and began to reclaim it, beating back the woods, the trees, and everything like that, and revealing all of this. And museums, the best things that were found on these grounds were put into museums. This is just the stuff that was left, the stuff that, wasn't worthy of the museums. But still, these are all Chorten bases. These are all stupa bases. This would have been filled with stupas that would have housed the relics of well-known, revered teachers of the time and so on. These are just the bases of those. So all this would have been built 2,600 years ago. So here we are on one of these lawns looking at this stupa I'll show you in a second. And it was just our group right here sitting, and Drupal said, well, let's do a meditation. So we would sit and we'd begin doing a meditation, Om Mani Padme Hung, we'd be chanting or something like that. And then we'd all be closed eyes and everything. And by the time we were finished and opened our eyes, there'd be 50 people sitting around us that would be chanting and would be meditating along with us. So it was like a magnet. Drupal was like a magnet. It was really magnificent. So here is a view, a map of what this whole area looked like. And here is the English translation of that significant board that was showing what was going on here. The history of this was engraved in these pillars by the Emperor Ashoka. I'm not a great scholar. I can't go into a lot of detail about this, but he wrote the history, the significance of what was going on about 200 or 300 years after the Buddha passed. Ashoka was the emperor of all this, India. And so he was recording what he knew to be the history at the time. So these pillars are all over the place. They're here in Sarnath, they're in Lumbini, they're in Gaya, they're in all these different places. And so people look for that and they're enshrined. So here is one where this has been, quite destroyed, but you can see the carvings of the Pali or Sanskrit, whatever language that is, being inscribed in there. And some of it, this would have been a very tall pillar that has broken apart by vandalism or just decay, that there was poor quality stone and broke apart. So here is the Dharmachakra stupa. So we'll see it in just a moment. This right here, this is the stupa. And this was built by Ashoka to house relics of the Buddha. And we'll see where that came from in Kusinagar, where the Buddha passed. But in here there was a shrine inside here. You could go inside at one time. And there's a pathway to circumambulate and so on. And this was our group sitting here looking at this stupa, doing our meditations, and the people joining us. So this is some of the carvings that was left behind, that weren't put into the museums. And you can see they've been worn by weather. Those carvings would have been very sharp and clear. This is harder stone here. But you see these themes of these circular themes and these spiral themes. You will see these spirals. And if you remember the film that we saw the fellow up in Canada, Michael Schmidt, who Inner Wisdom, Outer Wisdom, and who was talking about the theme of spirals and what mankind has done and what nature has done, and mankind has used that as meditation for to transcend their ordinariness into states of meditation. So this is just stuff that was just littered on the ground here. See all the detail of this, all this being done, of course, by hand. I mean, this stuff is 2,000 years old. So here's another stupa off in the distance here. We're still in Sarnath. Deer Park. So here's the deer. They still have deer in Deer Park, and they're put behind a fence to protect them. But this is where they're able to be free, among themselves, and it goes back into a much deeper woods and so on. But here's a watering hole. Now, this is the British museum that was built, in the 1800s or whatever, to house many of the artifacts that were found, when they beat back the forest. They wouldn't allow us to take pictures in here, but they did have things that you could purchase that were photographs of the different things, and they had people selling little stone artifacts that were modern day carvings of the Buddhas and things like that. So now we're headed north across the Ganges River. And remember, the Ganges River has many tributaries, or many different rivers all flow as part of the Ganges, and it's all called the Mother Ganges. And so we're driving across to get to Kusinagar, where the Buddha passed away, where he got sick and passed away. So here's one of the tributaries. And you see the lay of the land. Here's the Ganges, a wider view. This is a ghat. So family, would live back here in this woods back here, and they would come, and this would be a place where they could do their cremations, and they could come here and do their morning ablutions, and they would bathe in the river and so on, like that. So you can see there's people there doing their washes. So this is upriver from where the ghats where they do the burnings, where the fire burnings are. This is inside the bus that we were in. The bus was a bus about big enough for 25 people, I think. And we were like 13 people. So we have plenty of room to stretch out and so on. There is a driver whose only job is to drive and pay complete attention to what's going on in the road, because the roads are full of people and bicycles and animals and so on. And the driver has an attendant, has somebody who helps to, make sure that the bus is in order and take care of the people and help the driver in any way that he can. Our bus had a front door that would stick. And here, the attendant is kicking open the door because that's what he had to do. So here we're coming through an area. This is like a little 7-Eleven that sells candies and things like that for the community. And here is the community of all these grass huts and thatched roofs and so on. And here are people that live in them. And you see these women who are dressed in these beautiful silks and beautiful garments and so on. They live in these huts. So this part of India is populated by Hindus and Muslims. So many of the signs are written in both Hindi Hindi and in Muslim, and also in English. So we're walking down, this sand is like powder, like talcum powder, very, very fine. And we're down on the shore here of the river. You see people going out, and here they would have festivities, and the whole community, hundreds, thousands of people would come and sit on these stone steps, and they would have ceremonies that would happen on the river and everything. And so here we are among those people coming and bathing. You can see this. This was the road that we were on before, up here, that bridge. And here collecting some of the silt. And this is me standing in the River Ganges. So you say it's quite of a transformation. And this is my good friend, Lama Kunchuk Sultrum. This was our guide, Shime. He was Tibetan. So we had contracted with him back in the Tibetan colony back in Delhi to guide us through all of the things that we needed to do and so on like that. And he stayed with us the whole entire time. There's our Chinese friend, Mr. Hao. Here we are coming back up now out of the down by the river. So this was pretty good wiring here. This wasn't so bad as we saw before. But here's another one of those little centers, a strip mall, where you could come and get something to eat and buy things. So here's the Hotel Highway Studio. Store, excuse me. So around the corner, this over here, this is a latrine, which is very unusual around here. As we were driving through the farms, those flat farms that we saw and everything, and as we began our first trip, the bus driver just pulled on the side of the road and opened up the door, and all the men got up and got off and went into the field to go relieve themselves, to go pee in the fields. The women stayed in the bus. They said, "Oh, we'll wait till we get to a proper place. We're not going to go out there," and so on. And the men just shook their heads and so on, and continued on for another couple hours till they pulled off on another side of the road, and the men got up, were getting ready to get up, and the women were pushing the men aside to be the first ones out the door so that they could go and relieve themselves. And that's why people, would wear skirts and so on, because they could just squat down into the grass and have some privacy as they did that. But here is a place where they had an actual latrine, but this was pretty foul. But here we discovered something very interesting, and here was a marijuana bush. This thing was huge, and so we harvested a couple leaves for ourselves and had a laugh about that. This was a bed. This is a typical bed of the peasants around here, and so I had to be a show off and mimic my teacher and lay on the bed. This is the guy whose bed it is, and he's thinking to himself, now what is this guy doing? And I'm such a pig, I should have been generous and given him, some money, but it didn't even occur to me, I just didn't know the custom. And that was the thing about this. And this was one of the things that Kunchuk Gelchen was trying to tell us, was to be generous and to be compassionate for the people, because you all ain't seen anything like this before in America. So, with me, it hadn't, I hadn't really settled in. I really didn't understand what was being conveyed here. So this was a hotel that had been abandoned. I have no idea why. And this is a schoolhouse that is right now in use by students there. You could hear them chanting and so on. Here's more of the flat grounds of farms and so on. So here's another example of, what it was like there, growing wheat or whatever. Now we're moving through a little village, and the kids come up, and here's the attendant forcing open the door, kicking open the door. So now we come to Kusinagar, India. So this is where the Buddha passed and where he was cremated. And there's a number of very holy. The Kusinagar was so quiet. It was so peaceful in this place. There was very little noise. People spoke softly, and it's a small place, not a big village at all. So this here is the stupa of the 28-foot reclining Buddha. So here inside, here is the reclining Buddha, who's got gold leaf on his body and so on. Now, Kunga asks, is change has been made. I've seen photographs of this more recently, and they put up plexiglass all around this, so you can't access this. We were fortunate enough that at this time, the plexiglass wasn't in place, so it was much more intimate. And as a matter of fact, when we first got there, the silks weren't even on the reclining Buddha. They put them on here for us to see a little bit later in the day. So during this time, we were in here and chanting Om Mani Padme Hum, and it was just incredible. It was very, very, very powerful. And then circumambulating around, here we are circumambulating around the 28-foot reclining Buddha. So you see there's a whole bunch of different people here. This is Drupan Tenling Ningpo. And these are the Theravadan monks. And the Theravadan monks have taken the responsibility to be the keepers of all these shrines, the ones in Gaya, the ones here in Kusinagar, the ones in Sarnath, and so on. They are the caretakers of this. This is part of their job. So I imagine that they take shifts, maybe they spend a month or a season here and then they go back to their home place and somebody else comes in and so on. But they were wonderful, and if you smile at them, they smile back, but otherwise they were very somber and very sweet. So here you can see in the saffron robes, these are the Theravadan monks, and then so here's our group wearing red, so we were the Tibetan group. And these are different shrines for different nationalities that build their own shrines in these holy places, so that when their people come, they have a place to go and to do practice as their particular culture does. So this would be a Thai place. You can see it closer. Thai or Cambodian. And here is this would be Hindu. This was Burma, I believe. This was India. So as we were, getting ready to go somewhere or something, we'd be standing around. These kids would just materialize, and they knew to come to Drupal. I don't know how, but he had coins to give all these kids. And we began doing that. We began, getting coins. And when these kids would come to us, they go up and they go, hello, 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 holding out their hands for a handout of some coins. This is the stupa. This is the enlightenment, no, the impermanent stupa. This is the stupa of the location where the Buddha was cremated. And this stupa is made up of bricks. And it looks like it's round and everything, but it's got jagged edges because this is all undulating bricks, and shows there's no regularity to it all. There's no, even dimension or anything, and it's to demonstrate the impermanence of life. So in the belly of this, or underneath of this, excavations, modern excavations have been made to retrieve some of the relics of the Buddha that were left there. When the Buddha was cremated, it wasn't until word went out to all the different nationalities, and they had time to send their emissaries to here to Kusinagar, and they all received different parts of the relics that were left behind in the cremation, teeth or hair or fingernails, whatever. And then they were taken back to their shrines and were then were worshipped and put into their altars and so on as these great holy places. So here we are in another one of our meditations. And you can see now the a little more of the brickwork that is done with this. You see all the palm trees. It's very tropical there. I don't know what happened to the sound. So here are some Korean monks that are here worshiping, and we were very respectful. They had their own way of doing this. You can see that over here they have an offering that they're making here, this pot and so on. We were there, it was late February, early March. So it was before the real tourist season. And very often the Dalai Lama would come here, would come to these places and would give ceremonies. And there would be hundreds of thousands of people, and not lay people, but monks would be all here doing their pilgrimages and so on. So we managed to come here at a very good time in order to be able to navigate our ways around and not having to be interrupting or bumping into other monastics who were doing their ceremonies. So we're doing a circumambulation around the stupa of impermanence. This was another thing that we regularly did. Here in Kusinagar, you got around on these little tricycle things that these men would cart you around. And our driver was this old guy here. And I felt sorry for him, but he was strong and he was stoic and he did his job.
He's only 30.
So here are some paintings that were outside the rooms that we were in the hotel that we were in here in Kusinagar. So these paintings were right in the vestibule as you walked into your room, and they were gorgeous. So here is the illustration of the Buddha being tempted by the dancing girls that we learned about in the Lalita Prastar Stupa and so on. So there were other pictures of other tempters that were there. So now we cross over from India into Lumbini, and Lumbini is in Nepal, and it is the birthplace of the Buddha. So here's another Ashoka pillar that is telling the story of Lumbini and the birthplace of the Buddha. This building behind it was constructed by the Japanese several years ago to protect the ruins that are 3,000 years old that are underneath that pavilion.
You mean
You'll see that.
Chinese?
What's that?
Did you mean Chinese?
No, the Japanese built this protecting building over here.
Huh.
Because there's very devout Japanese Buddhists. So you had the sacred pond where they bathed, so it's showing all the different important things here. It's been, they put in these seats and everything, but the water is basically the same. So here are the foundations of buildings that were present at the time the Buddha was there. And so you'll see there's what is said to be a footprint of him when he took his 7 steps after being born. There's a footprint here. This here is said to have been the footprint of the baby Buddha. This was a modern sculpture that hung over all of this. So all these stones, all this was all done 3,000 years ago. So this building this land is prone to earthquakes, and this building is to be earthquake proof. So this is the superstructure to protect all this brickwork. So you can see here, this might have been some windows that were bricked in. And this is up on top here. And this is a typical Nepali Buddhist, the top of the stupa. And here's the moon. Can you see the moon? So now these are foundations of much larger stupas. This is a whole stupa. These are stupas here, chortens, just the foundations. All this was destroyed. All the buildings were destroyed by the Muslims. When the Muslims came in around the year, 400 or 500 years after the Buddha passed, and or maybe it was later than that, and so they took out what was left of the buildings that were built by the Buddhists. So all this would have been all built up here. Here's a banyan tree, the kind of tree, this was what it might appear to have been, and here's a sal tree of what it was that the Buddha would have been living in or meditating in. So here's the Chorten bases. These are gardens This is in Lumbini now, the birthplace of the Buddha. All this was all left to the forest. So this is a shrine room, a Nepali Buddhist shrine room. And this over here is a Tibetan shrine room, like a monastery, a place where the Tibetans could come and stay. So these would have been relatively new construction. So this is inside the Tibetan shrine. And this is inside the Nepali shrine. And it's much simpler, much more not as ornate, but no less very, very powerful. And these are Tonka paintings that display the four kings. This huge drum. This is, I'm sorry, the last part would have been inside the Tibetan part. This is inside the Nepali part. This is the Nepali entrance. So this is a shrine for Buddha. Here's another. This one is made out of pure white alabaster. I mean, no seam, perfectly smooth, absolutely magnificent stone carving. This is over a doorway, and this shows the procession of the mother of the Buddha making her way through Lumbini to go to her mother's house to give birth. But this is an illustration of what that would have looked like. The wheel of existence. Champu. So here we are. We're in the function that we were coming to is the consecration of the Great Lotus Stupa for our lineage here, and that there was going to be a 2006 celebration of Buddhism, and this was to be commemorated as the meditation center of the world for the next 1,000 years. So here, this is, it's typical of these Buddhist things that they would get together like this, and they would have these tents to sell all different kinds of crafts and things to the people who come to these things. It's where they buy all these things. So here's something that's under construction. This could be Japanese. Here's another one that's under construction. Here's another one under construction by the different nationalities of the different Buddhist people. This one was huge. So here, well, it went away too fast. But here's a close-up of that. And there were people that were crashing up in here. You know, this here is a stupa that has been there for many, 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 many years. It might have been the first stupa that was built, and is part of the eternal flame, the eternal shrine for Lumbini. And for a long time, it was the only shrine in Lumbini. Now we have all these other ones. So you can see it now in this distance. So this is the Great Lotus Stupa here, back in the distance, and these are access roads. It was very beautiful. I liked this very much. This is the irrigation, how they would come and irrigate these farms. You know, they had water that would come up, and they had pumps. These were hand operated pumps. And you see these women out here in the trees. They're collecting cow pies. They're making their way back to the village. And here they got their cows, and I'm walking through here. I decided to take a walk, and I got myself lost. And this cow was walking straight for me. It was coming from this direction. And as soon as I picked up my camera to take a picture, he veered off to the left and went into this field. This is one of those guest house. This was the hotel in which we were staying. And these were the maids who took care of the rooms for us and so on. And out here is this woods that at night, unbelievable sounds. The windows were open. There were screens in place, otherwise the bugs would come in. But at night, shrieks and howls and cries coming from these woods. And the animals that must have been producing those was just mind-bending. I woke up, early, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and would sit on the edge of the bed in front of the window and just do meditation with these sounds going on. It was just absolutely awesome. This was the old guest house, and this was just the ruins, and we were in the new part. I don't think I have a picture of that. So here is the gateway that leads into the Great Lotus Stupa. And this is the main street of Lumbini. Here are the shops and so on. See the animals walking around, and you don't see any cars. This is the bank. The bank was always on holiday. If you needed to go to the bank, you'd always have to wait till next week or something. And here's a little girl, a goat herder girl, with her goat, and got one in her arms and one she's walking with. Here's a restaurant that we went to quite often. We were here about 9 days in Lumbini for the consecration ceremonies. And here is a restaurant this is open sky, and just these tables are covered over, and we're here for an evening dinner.
How was the food?
Hot, spicy. I had to be very careful what I ate. So
Was it vegetarian, or does it?
Oh,
do
it
they
was
not
all
have-
vegetarian, all vegetarian. So this was just one dining room, then there was another one on the other side. And here were the monks who were traveling with us. This is Kempo Munlam, who is now a Kempo. He's up in Rochester. He's up in Rochester. He's from Venezuela. He lives in Florida now. It's Nadoon. This is Michael Campbell, and this is I couldn't think of his name. Oh, here we are sitting here. We had lots of idle time just to sit and talk and meditate if we wanted to. It was very serene. This is the eternal flame. So for a long time, this was the only shrine here, the eternal peace flame. So now we're back coming through this gateway and walking down this long road. And we made this trip every day, back and forth. We would have lunch down here. Here's another building under construction. These are buses that there was 3,000 people that came for this consecration of the stupa. 2,000 of them were monastics, and 1,000 were lay people from all around the world. So, the stupa itself had just been completed, but all the landscaping and so on still had not been done. If you go online, you can Google Great Lotus Stupa, you can Google Lumbini, India, or Lumbini, Nepal, and you'll see all the recent pictures. So this is the stupa that was designed actually by Lord Jigten Sumgun, it said. That he had made the designs for this, and that this was done as he indicated. And absolutely magnificent. It took 2 years to build this, I understand, and the craftsmen that came from all around the world, but mostly India and Nepal, and their whole families came and took up residence in the area here. To do their work. All the statues that are here were cast here. All the paintings were done. These are all frescoes. These are all hand painted on the walls of the stupa. All this woodwork and so on, magnificent. Beautiful. There was the five Buddha families, and Shakyamuni Buddha in the center. Kala chakra symbol. These are gardens, so they have 4 gardens on the 4 sides. This is the Padma garden. This is the Vajra garden. This is, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell what that was. And this is looking inside the stupa. The stupa is huge. And when we left, after we left, Garchen Rinpoche gave a closed retreat, a Yamantaka retreat, a dark retreat, no light retreat for, I don't know how long it was for, a week or something like that. And so here is Marpa and Lord Jigten Sumgun, and I don't know who this is, but here are the heads of the Buddha families and so on. So these are some of these murals that are there. This is like a village scene. I mean, the colors are breathtaking. I mean, these photographs don't do the actual pictures justice.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I'm sorry the music's not going. So these are the 21 Taras. This whole wall, this whole mural, the 21 Taras. So these are close-ups of them. This is my first time putting a DVD like this together, and so I made a lot of redundancies and a lot of errors that I wish I had, could have done better if I knew what I was doing. But somebody else was actually doing the computer work, and I was just asking him to do this, that, and the other thing. So here's Green Tara in the center of these 21 Taras. So there's another view where you see the whole wall. And it's a famous picture. You know, these 21 tars are very famous, and I've got a whole study that I did of all the names, all the characteristics, qualities of all these tars. There's wrathful deities here, peaceful deities here. Here's Guru Rinpoche. This is Talopa, I believe. So here is the wheel of existence, the six realms, the center of the hub with the three animals and the dualistic rising, descent, and then the 12 links of interdependence or dependent origination. So this is now around the veranda, the perimeter of the stupa. And the floors are all beautiful, gorgeous marble. And all the furniture and everything was all done by hand on site. All the painting, of course, was all done. The etching for this glass, now this had to be imported from someplace, but the etching is just magnificent on these doors. This is a door handle, a naga. That's a naga representation. And this is the stairway that goes up to the bumpa, that you can go up here. So we'll get to some photographs of that soon. So this is around the base, peacocks, snow lions, horses, Sivam Savikas, half man, half bird. The Dorje or the Vajra symbol. So this is up on the top part overlooking, you know, the courtyards below. These light up at night and are beautiful. This is something really interesting because they have all these lights that are twinkling at nighttime, you know, on these different features of the stupa, and this is the switch that controls those lights. This is like a drum, like you know the player pianos that had those cylinder drums. So the motor is here. It has a belt that drives this wheel here that drives this drum, and here are the switches that are connected to all these wires that go out to the lights. So me being an electronics guy, you know, I was just blown away by this, you know, that somebody built this, and of course it works. And
Looks
probably,
like a fire waiting to happen.
well, it's all low voltage, so it's not that big a deal, but it's an accident waiting to happen. You're right about that. And they got, you know, this metal foil is on here when it lights up and when it doesn't light up. So I just thought that was a riot. So now this is looking out over, you can see the different buildings. If you go there now, it would be all built up, and I imagine all this would be very, very functional.
Is that stupa basically like a mandala, a three-dimensional mandala? So it's got that kind of, all the different rooms and things have spiritual significance.
What were you talking about? The Great Lotus Stupa?
Yeah.
The Great Lotus Stupa has that one big room on the first floor, and up top in the bumpa, it has a Chakrasamvara shrine. and we'll see that in a minute. So so the Great Lotus Stupa is all walled in with these walls here, and this is one of the guest houses on the property. So if we were to go, we would ask, request that we could stay in one of these guest houses. So here's the main guest house. This is where His Holiness Chögyam Rinpoche stays. So this is inside the bumpa. The bumpa is the big round part at the top of the stupa. It would be like the heart of the stupa. And inside here, this is another stupa that is the shrine of Shakrasamvara. And Shakrasamvara is the Yidam deity of the Drikung Kagyu. So you can look inside here and you can see, they got little statues and so on like that. I don't think I got good pictures of that. I didn't know enough of exactly what this was at the time. I'd only been involved with TMC for about 3 years or so when I got the invitation to be able to go and do this. So there was a lot that I just didn't know that I've learned since. So this is on the walls and the ceiling of that inside. This is the ceiling inside the bumpa. The bumpa is the most holiest part. Now we're back downstairs. These are all the 108 Pecha sutras that we talk about and so on. This is where they house those. And then these are the 84 Mahasiddhas. So these are the great practitioners, siddhas, yogis, who came from Udayana. That Padmasambhava was one of these guys. And they're flying and cavorting and doing all kinds of things. They're all in some kind of motion, showing their activities and so on. And Guru Rinpoche was one of them. So all these statues, like I said, were cast here on site by these masters of artisan families. So every one of these has a name and a functionality, an activity. What is the correct time? I don't have my clock with me.
It's 8:54.
Oh, it's that late already.
It's getting late.
Do you want to stay a little bit longer and I can take you through more of this, or do you want to turn this off at 9 o'clock?
I'm up for staying a little bit longer. I don't know how long.
Maybe another 10 minutes after 9, something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
no doubt, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Is Bernie still with us? So this is the inside. So this is it's round. This is that inside of the Great Lotus Stupa.
Wow.
So here, so it's huge. You can get 100 people in here very easy. So here were all these statues are. Here's where all the Kangyur and the Tengyur. The Kangyur are the sutras, and the Tengyur are the tantras. So the practices are the Tengyur, and the doctrine, more or less, is the Kangyur. So all this is there. This is the throne for what would be the Dalai Lama. If the Dalai Lama came, this would be his place to sit. And up here is Vajradhara, in union with Vajradhari, his consort, representing the primordial nature. And at the very top is this beautiful painting, and around the circumference are these repeating drawings, illustrations of the 5 wisdom Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So here is the throne. I managed to jump up and snap this picture. You can see there's a picture of the Dalai Lama. And here is a picture of a closer statue, almost a life-size statue. I mean, it's all inspiring. You know, the reverence that I felt for all of this, not knowing exactly what it all was just totally compelling and mesmerizing. Here are the 3 friends, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 friends. These are narratives. These are stories, picture stories. There's another picture of the Dalai Lama. The craftsmanship is just magnificent. Again, all this was done on site. Flying Mahasiddhas. This here is a Kadvanga, is the staff that Padmasambhava Guru Rinpoche holds. I requested to take refuge with Drupal Tinley Ningpo here, and he sat me down here to take refuge. And it was a great, great honor to be able to do that. And a very special moment in my life. This is a close-up of that Kadvanga. Someday we can talk about the symbology of the meaning of all of that. So now this is the front entrance. We're looking through the front entrance. Here on the 4 corners are incensers, incense that were constantly burning incense while we were there. And Shakyamuni Buddha. Now this is the apex of the ceiling above the main hall. And this is Shakrasambhara. So he is the Yidam of the Drikung Kagyu. So this is the dedication of the stupa. So this is, sorry the audio is not going. But anyway, here they build this huge tent out on the front steps that houses all the people who are there, and this is the circumambulation after all the prayers are recited and so on. So this is His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche, and then here behind him, right over here, is Garchen Rinpoche. Chetsang, he's the throne holder. Here's Garchen Rinpoche. And here is Drupal. And unbeknownst to me at the time, here is Drupal. And right here, this is Khenpo Samdup. And I didn't know Khenpo Samdup at that time. But when I met him, I said, "You look certainly familiar to me." And he would say, "Yeah, you look familiar to me." And, all the white guys look like the same, I guess, But anyway, And then one day it dawned on me, I got a picture of him. And I came and looked it up in my computer, and sure enough, it was that picture of Khenpo Samduk. So this is early in the morning that we're on our way to morning prayers. And it was all foggy. And this particular morning we had a ride in this Jeep to take us there. And, they're blowing the horns. They got this daily ritual that they do. And here's everybody, in making offerings, doing the offering ceremony, the mandala offering. Here is a group of people lined up making the mandala offering was done every day. Two mandala offerings were done every day. And all the people's names that were being represented were all said. So it was, and we got, I don't remember, maybe like 15 empowerments during the time we were there. We were getting ready to make our offering. So here's Naidun holding a statue of Vajradhara. And so these were all offerings that our group made. Here's a stupa, Vajradhara.
Did you bring these with you to offer?
Yes. Here's money that was being offered. Here's another stupa. So this was our group from TMC, from Frederick, Maryland. And here we are standing in line here, and all the names are being read. This man here is reading all the names. So here's our group here. More people we've met there, who weren't in our group doing the pilgrimage, but met here to make these offerings. That's Sue DeBall. There's Crazy Lance. So here is, in the morning, Chutsang is here, over here, and there's a procession to bring him in. So this is every morning, and then the prayers come, and then the mandala offerings are made, and then the teachings are given, and the empowerments and so on. So here are just snapshots of many of the monastics that were there. He was my good friend here. He helped me. He made sure I had food. Here are two thrones because in the Drikung Kagyu, there's two brother throne holders, the younger brother and the older brother. And they sit, they're equals with each other. And it's so that the Drikung Kagyu always has a throne holder. These are offering mandalas, or not mandalas, but water offerings and other offerings, food offerings, and so on like that. So there was a contingent of, I was told 1,000 monastics who came from Taiwan. All this was being recorded, all this was being filmed, and it was the first time anything like that was being done, because before that it was forbidden that you couldn't do those kinds of things. But because of this age of degeneration, they said, we got to preserve all this, it may not be ever done again, so go ahead and record everything that we can. So these are offerings that are being made to His Holiness, Chotsang Rinpoche. This was my good friend. These were two lamas who always sat next to me. I always sat next to them, and they would call me Bala, And after 3 or 4 days, I said to Drupal, I said, they always call me Bala. What's that mean? He says, oh, it means grandfather. And they would come and they would hold my arms and they would play with the hair on my arms because they had no hair like that. Very sweet. This is a Jetsuma from America. Actually, they're up in Vermont now. And this is the empowerment where His Holiness, he goes through the whole audience and is bestowing the empowerment. And behind him is Garchen Rinpoche, who's giving the empowerment. He would give the, Chetsang would give the body empowerment. He would give the secret empowerment. And somebody else would give the word empowerment, the wisdom empowerment. So here's Drupan sitting up on the big stage. So our tradition is called the red hat tradition. The Galupa is the yellow hat, and the Shakya are the black hat. And I think the Nyingma have black hat. This is some girl trying to do some kind of genetics, or I don't know what you call it, trying to read the energy of this monk.
Looks like one of those Scientology things.
Yes, maybe. Young girl doing yoga meditation. These are Nepalese people who were taking care of the facilities. These are kids, and part of the offerings are distributed to all the monastics. The money just doesn't go, willy-nilly. It gets divided between all the monastics that come for this, especially the kids. They have no other source of money. And here, we arrived one day, and all these marigolds were here. And so I couldn't resist but sit and in the midst of this, and this green tie around my neck. When we got to have an audience with His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche, he gave us these ties to wear for the day, signifying that we had met with him. I had a PDA, a Palm Pilot, if you guys know what that is. But 20 years ago, that was before cell phones and so on like that. And I used it for work, and I had it with me, taking notes and everything. And the kids were totally enthralled with it. And they used it till they rubbed a hole in the scratch pad on the thing. And I didn't care. I was happy for them and everything. But they were so sweet, and they made sure I got taken care of. It was very, very sweet. There's my friend who called me Bala. And that's my friend who took care of me, these two guys. So he'd be in his 30 years old now. He was the guy who wanted to take a picture. And here are two of the women that were with us. And behind here are those things that are being sold. This here is the kitchen, where these are all butter tea kettles. So these vats are the vats in which the butter tea is made. And then it's poured into these kettles, and then the young kids, the young monks, run the kettles into the shrine room and feed everybody that's there. And along with those tea come these like biscuits that are about 2 inches high and about 3 inches in diameter, and they're tasty, but they're like lead. And in the morning, that was our breakfast at like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. That was our breakfast. So it was a real experience of being with with the Tibetans, being in that culture and so on. So this is almost finished. These are those marigolds that we saw on the ground. Now they're all, layered up on the top, and they gave me one to wear, and conversation with Katie, my buddy. These guys are Nepalis, or Bhutanese, excuse me, Bhutanese. There's my Palm Pilot, and the guys working on the Palm Pilot. They wanted to write in English. They wanted to learn English. They knew English. Here's a mandala offering. Great load of the Wheel of Existence. Now, I don't know his name, but he obviously is Garchen Rinpoche. So the other Lama, Shunsang Rinpoche, he lives in, he was, at this time, he was living in Lhasa. He was the Chinese government's liaison. He was like the head of religious affairs for the Chinese in Tibet. So he had a very high position, and he did not, he chose to stay in Tibet. He didn't leave like Shunsang Rinpoche did. But since he retired from that job from the Chinese, and he went back to Drikung to be the head of the throne holder in Tibet. So here was a herbal medicine where Amshi, a doctor, was, and you could go over here and have a medical conference interview with him, and he would recommend medicine for you and so on, and you could buy all different kinds of other things, clothing and bells and stupas, statues, all these different kinds of things. So here we are leaving. So now we're in these two Jeeps and our luggage all up on the top, and we're making our way out, and we have to go across the border back into India. And they had to do quite a negotiation because in Nepal you got to bribe everybody, and so they had to negotiate that for us. So I took this picture of LG because, I worked in the business where we had stuff like that, and LG was just coming into our country. So this is the border. This is the Nepali border, and on the other side is India. So we had to sit in the car here for about an hour or so, waiting for this negotiation to take place. So now we're at the train station of Gorakhpur, and we're going to take the overnight train back to Delhi. Yes, that was all luggage. And these sacks are filled with little green peppers that just standing too close to them, you can get a burn in your nose. They were so hot. And flies were flying around them like crazy. And but that's what the train station was like. And here, here's three of our people sitting on a bench, and here's a lady sitting on the floor here. So she wasn't begging for anything. And here's stuff being offloaded the train and going through their version of customs, which required a bribe, I'm sure. And this was a tea cart, and you could go up and get a cup of chai, cup of tea. And this is inside the train. This is where these seats would fold up into beds, and we could lie down and sleep. Of course, they were only about 5 feet wide, so my feet hung off. This guy, I found out, I sat next to him for a long time. We had a long conversation, and it turns out he was quite a Muslim professor, and he was asking me all kinds of questions about Buddhism. And my knowledge was very limited at the time, but it was enough to have a very nice conversation with him. Imagine doing that now. And this was his guard, I guess, his companion. These were two nice people, Hindi people that I met. This was Jupan's brother, cousin brother. This was Soltram. More people. And this is the carver. This is Sampa, the carver. And I got a whole bunch of things that he's carved for me that I bought from him, and I gave away as gifts and so on. And magnificent. And he's the one, he did the whole altar at Drupan's meditation center, Dharma center in Florida. He did the whole thing there. Absolutely magnificent. He's from a family of carvers. It's a family tradition held, passed down. So this was in a restaurant. I was just taking pictures of the artwork, having a lunch. Buddha Dharma store. So many of the books that we get and statues come through this store. There's Karma. And this is at night, looking down I was on a porch upstairs, about 3 stories up, looking down on the streetscape at night. And there's roasted chickens in the window, duck in the window here. These white, red, you'll see it closer. You can't make out what they are, but they're roasted ducks for a restaurant. And it was just beautiful at night and very magical for us. This was coming through the airport. So after this, there's not a whole much. There's just a couple more pictures. A few souvenirs that I got. This is a table, a puja table that I got from Sampa that he carved, and I purchased it from him. He had already carved it before I met him, but and it folds up into about a size of a big briefcase, believe it or not. So I still have it. I use it as my shrine table, as my altar table. It's all sandalwood. It's all carved out of sandalwood. the snow lion. I said, should I paint this? And they went, oh no, don't do that. Oh no. They were totally incredulous that I should even think of something like that. It is dedicated to Khenchen Kunchok Yeltsin Rinpoche, founder of the Tibetan Meditation Center, Frederick, Maryland. Thank you to His Holiness Drikung Kagyu Chetsang Rinpoche for his vision of the Great Lotus Stupa. These are the final words of the Buddha. Behold, O disciples, now I exhort you. All compounded, conditioned things have their state of nature of constant flux, and they are all subject to change. Strive on ardently with your mindfulness to complete your tasks. These were the last words of the Buddha.
Thank you for sharing that, Commodore. It's
Yeah,
great.
that was amazing.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you, and I'm only sorry that we lost the audio there. Bernie has seen this before, so, and plus it's past his bedtime, so. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you.
That must have been an incredible experience.
It was. It was. It changed my life.
Yeah.
You know, I came back and I had a business meeting, you know, with our company when I came back, and they went around asking people what they wanted to do. I said, well, I want to be a monk in a couple of years. I want to retire and be a monk. And I was never the same. So if you get an opportunity to go, I would strongly recommend it, you know, even if it's for a short visit or something, because it will turn you around. All right. Any comments or questions? Anything?
Nope. See you next week on Monday. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So we're going to start with 37 practices with Geshe, and that's going to be wonderful. So, Matt, I hope you can make it. We'll record everything and put it on YouTube no matter what. And hopefully we'll have some new people to join us. And he wants to make it a conversation. So whatever you can do for that.
Great. Thank you.
In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent.
Excellent.
I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother, by the virtue, by this, I forgot. Thank you. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.